On December 20th, 2010, one of New Orleans' most recognizable voices in hip-hop drove into her parking lot of her apartment complex and never made it out alive again. Within seconds, gunmen surrounded her car and opened fire. When the shooting stopped, Magnolia Shorty, the woman known as the Queen of Bounce, had been shot more than 24 times. But investigators would later discover this was more than rap.
Please don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hip-hop was built on truth, but not every truth makes the headlines. Behind the beats and the bars are real lives, women who rose from the streets, fought for their voices, and faced dangers beyond the stage. Some were taken by violence, some were lost to the pressures of the fame, some never got a chance to tell their story. This is UGG True Crime, where we uncover the real stories behind the fallen queens of hip-hop.
Please don't forget to like and subscribe.
The Queen of Bounce, Magnolia Shorty.
Bounce music is fast, high tempo. It's more of a gospel feeling to me. You have no choice but to move and dance. It brings joy. Like bounce music in New Orleans, oh my God.
That's what people know about bounce music. It's fun, it's gonna make you dance, it's gonna represent you.
Before she became Magnolia Shorty, she was Renetta Yemika Lowe. She was born a Libra, September 30th, 1982, and grew up in New Orleans during a time when the city's neighborhoods were as famous for their culture as they were for their struggles. Renetta spent much of her childhood around the Magnolia housing development, one of the most historically significant public housing complexes in New Orleans. The Magnolia Projects had produced musicians, athletes, and street legends. It was a neighborhood known for toughness, pride, and community identity. In New Orleans, music was everywhere. Brass bands marched through the streets during second-line parades. Neighborhood block parties turned into dance floors, and car stereos blasted a sound that was beginning to define the city. Bounce music.
I got a new boy and a
And the powerful influence she created by paving the lane and opening doors for all bounce artists to thrive.
For young Renetta Lowe, music wasn't just something you listened to. It was part of daily life. But Renetta's life wasn't untouched by the violence that shaped many New Orleans neighborhoods. When she was still young, she was shot in the eye during a violent incident. The injury left her blind in that eye, and she would later wear a prosthetic. For many people surviving something like that would have meant stepping away from danger altogether. But not Renetta. Renetta didn't disappear. If anything, it hardened her resolve. She returned to the environment she knew best, the streets, the music, and the culture that surrounded her. And eventually, she found her voice.
From the rest.
When Renetta began performing, she took on a name that carried deep meaning. Magnolia Shorty. The name referenced both Magnolia Projects, where she grew up, and the influence of New Orleans Soulja Slim, who was also known as Magnolia Slim. The name tied her identity to the neighborhood and to the lineage of artists who came before her. And once she stepped into the local rap scene, she made an impression immediately. bounce music was loud, aggressive, and built for movement. Crowds expected energy, and Magnolia Shorty delivered. She became known for commanding stages and clubs with an intensity that matched any performer in the city. But her talent soon caught the attention of people who could take her career further. Yeah. During the 1990s, Cash Money Records was transformed from a local New Orleans label into a major force in hip-hop, with artists like Juvenile, BG, Turk, Lil Wayne. Man, they were helping define a new Southern sound. And Magnolia Shorty became one of the first women signed to the label. In a male-dominated industry, that alone was significant. But Shorty wasn't just there to represent women in rap. She was there to compete. Her music fit perfectly into the bounce scene. Fast beats, explicit lyrics, call and response hooks that turned clubs into dance floors. Her 1997 release, Donkey on That Dig, became a bounce anthem. The track spread through New Orleans clubs, street DJs, and mixtapes. And over time, Magnolia Shorty earned a nickname that followed her throughout the city. Yeah, you know it. The Queen of Bounce.
28-year-old Renetta Lowe, better known to her fans as Magnolia Shorty, was gunned down yesterday along with another man. And today, thousands of people are commenting on a Facebook page dedicated to the rapper. WDSU news reporter Sydney Chu.
On December 20th, 2010, Magnolia Shorty returned to her apartment at the Georgetown Apartments in New Orleans East. She was headed there because she was preparing to go to a bounce festival in Miami, Florida. She had to grab some things from her apartment. She arrived at the apartment with Jerome Man Hampton, a 25-year-old man who was riding with her that day, one of her friends. As Magnolia Shorty drove into the gated apartment complex in her Chevy Malibu, she was being followed into the entrance. Once she got inside of the parking complex, the other vehicle circled around and blocked her car in. Two gunmen exited the vehicle and began opening fire on her vehicle. Witnesses later described a barrage of gunfire, military style. Magnolia Shorty attempted to drive away, but the gate behind her had already closed, which made her escape impossible. The Malibu crashed into the gate as bullets tore into the vehicle. When the shooting stopped, both Magnolia Shorty and Jerome Hampton were dead. Autopsy reports later showed the brutality of the attack. Magnolia Shorty was shot 26 times. The scene made it clear this wasn't random violence. It was an ambush, and it damn sure wasn't about rap. In early reports, no one knew the answer. Everyone was just trying to figure it out, like, who would want Magnolia Shorty dead and in this violent way? Years later, that answer would be revealed. The killing would be tied to a much larger federal investigation. A violent New Orleans gang known as the 39ers. Now you ask yourself, how could Magnolia Shorty get caught up with such a violent gang? The 39ers and Magnolia Shorty? who was on the rise to be a star? The 39ers were described by federal prosecutors as a criminal enterprise involved in heroin trafficking, firearms offenses, and multiple murders across the city. The gang operated primarily in the central city area of New Orleans and maintained its power through violence and intimidation. Federal investigators eventually built a racketeering case targeting the group. The indictment alleged that members of the 39ers were responsible for numerous acts of violence, including the death of Magnolia Shorty. According to investigators, the intended target of the ambush wasn't Magnolia Shorty. It was Jerome Man Hampton. Magnolia Shorty was just caught up in Jerome Man Hampton's beef. According to court records, Rico Jackson and others had testified. Rico Jackson stated that Hampton had killed someone in Texas. Knockham and Stewart stated that the members of the 39ers had decided Hampton would be a problem as he was willing to kill anyone, quote unquote, from our neighborhood. So he had to be dealt with. Magnolia Shorty was just caught in the wrong place with the wrong man. Magnolia Shorty was killed because she was in a car with him, just being with a friend. The case became part of a massive federal prosecution. In 2017, 10 men associated with the 39ers were convicted of racketeering. Yeah, let's get to who did this to Magnolia Shorty, though. McCoy Rat Walker, Terrius T. Red Oney were specifically convicted in the murders tied to the ambush.
WDSU sources confirmed tonight that one of the victims of a double murder in broad daylight earlier today was indeed a popular local rapper. Fans are turning to the internet to mourn the loss of the second female rapper to sign on with Cash Money Records, a national label that began here in the Crescent City.
Magnolia Shorty's death was senseless and had nothing to do with her. Her funeral took place December 30th, 2010, and the city showed up and showed out, drawing a large crowd of fans, artists, and community members. For New Orleans, her death represented more than the loss of a musician. It was the loss of a cultural voice. She was the voice of the city, a woman who helped shape the sound of bounce music, a performer who gave energy to the city's nightlife and identity. Today, Magnolia Shorty's influence still echoes through New Orleans music, through bounce, through hip-hop, and through the artists who followed in her footsteps. Magnolia Shorty's story is a reminder that behind every headline is a life that existed long before its tragedy, a childhood, a neighborhood, a voice that became part of a city's culture. Her music helped define New Orleans bounce, and her legacy continues to live on in the sound of the city she called home. Rest in peace, Shorty. We love you. Never forget the fallen queens of hip-hop.